The boy's voice was barely louder than the falling snow, yet it stopped a billionaire's heart cold. "Mom said Santa forgot us again." Those 6 words drifted through the December night like something fragile, something that could shatter if touched too hard. They hung in the air beneath a flickering street lamp at the edge of the city, far from the laughter and glowing windows just a few blocks away. And when they reached a man sitting alone on a frozen bus stop bench, they cracked open a place inside him he had spent years sealing shut. The city was alive with Christmas. Storefronts shimmered with lights. Carols spilled out of restaurants, and families hurried along sidewalks with wrapped gifts tucked under their arms. The scent of roasted chestnuts and sugar hung in the cold air. Everywhere, joy pressed close, loud and warm. But none of it reached this corner. Here, the street was quiet. Snow dusted the metal bench, and the wind sliced through coats and gloves without mercy. The bus stop looked forgotten, like the last page of a book no one bothered to finish. Mark Grant sat at the far end of the bench, shoulders hunched, a paper cup of coffee growing colder in his gloved hand. He wore an expensive coat, tailored shoes, the kind of things people notice in boardrooms and glossy magazines. But tonight, none of that mattered. His hair was unkempt, his face hollowed by a kind of exhaustion sleep could never fix. His eyes stared ahead, unfocused, gray and distant, like a man waiting for something he already knew wasn't coming. Across from him sat a young woman and her son. The woman's coat was thin, clearly not made for nights like this. Her boots were worn, soles uneven from too much walking. She held her boy close, rubbing his small hand between hers, breathing warmth into them. Her smile came easily when he looked up at her, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. The boy was small for his age, maybe 6. His nose was red from the cold, his sweater sleeves too short, his jeans riding up above his ankles. He kept glancing down the road, hopeful every time headlights appeared. "Is that our bus, Mommy?" he asked softly as another SUV passed. The woman shook her head, brushing his hair back. "No, sweetheart, just someone else going home." The word home lingered between them. The boy nodded, then went quiet again, his gaze drifting to the glowing windows of nearby houses. He watched silhouettes move inside, families gathering around tables, trees sparkling in the corners of living rooms. Warm so close he could almost feel it, yet impossibly far away. The wind picked up. Snow swirled harder. She pulled him tighter against her chest, and he leaned into her shoulder, eyes growing heavy. The bus stop fell into silence. Then came the whisper. "Mom said Santa forgot us again." Mark's hand froze around the coffee cup. He didn't breathe. He didn't blink. Slowly, as if something unseen had tugged at him, he turned his head. The boy's face was turned downward now, voice small, matter-of-fact. Like this was simply how the world worked. Like forgetting was normal. Something inside Mark split open. That voice, that exact tone, it dragged a memory out of the dark and slammed it into him without warning. His daughter, Emily, standing by the window years ago on Christmas Eve, pressing her hands to glass as snow fell outside. She had been the same age, same hopeful sound when she spoke, same belief that promises mattered. He had promised to be home early that night. Instead, he stayed at the office, chasing numbers, taking calls, telling himself he had time. Emily had drawn him a picture to surprise him with. She had waited and waited. He never made it home. Mark swallowed hard, blinking against a sudden sting in his eyes. The woman noticed his gaze and shifted instinctively, pulling her son a little closer. Her shoulders stiffened, protective. Before she could turn away, Mark spoke. His voice came out low, careful, like he was afraid of breaking something already cracked. "How old are you?" The boy glanced up at his mother for permission, then back at Mark. "6," he said. "I turned 6 last week." Mark nodded. "Happy birthday." "We had cake," the boy added proudly. "From the store. Vanilla." "Vanilla's good," Mark said. The boy grinned, even though the frosting melted in Mom's bag on the bus. The woman laughed softly, embarrassed and amused all at once. "He likes to talk," she said, "especially when he's cold." Mark finally looked at her properly. Really looked. The thin coat, the tight grip on her son, The way she smiled like it was something she did for other people more than herself. "I could call a cab," Mark offered after a moment. "Get you somewhere warm." She shook her head quickly. "That's kind, but we're okay. We're waiting for the bus." Mark glanced down the empty street. Snow was falling thicker now, swallowing sound, blurring the edges of the world. "It's not coming," he said gently. She frowned. "You sure?" He nodded. "Storm's getting worse. Late routes usually get canceled." Her jaw tightened, and she hugged her son closer. "We'll wait a little longer," she said, trying to sound confident. "Just in case." Mark hesitated. Then, almost against his own instincts, he said, "My place is a few blocks from here. You could come warm up. Just for a bit." Her head snapped up. "No," she said automatically. "We're fine. It's just a house," he replied. "You don't have to stay. Just not out here." The boy stirred, lifting his head. He studied Mark's face with sleepy curiosity. Then he whispered his mother, "He looks like Santa, like the one I drew." She let out a small, nervous laugh. "He does not." Mark didn't smile, but he didn't look away either. The woman searched his face. Something in him felt familiar, not dangerous, just empty, lonely in a way she understood too well. "Okay," she said finally, "just for a little while." The boy clapped his hands. "Is it a castle, Mr. Santa?" Mark blinked, then nodded once. "Not exactly, but it's warm." His house stood on a quiet street, stone steps leading up to a large front door. Elegant, imposing, and dim, it looked less like a home and more like something waiting to be lived in again. Inside, warmth wrapped around them instantly. Mark turned on lights as they moved through the space. The house smelled faintly of coffee and dust. Clean, orderly, lifeless. No tree, no decorations, no music. The boy looked around, puzzled. "Where's your Christmas stuff?" Mark paused. "I didn't put any up this year." "Why?" He exhaled slowly. "I forgot how." The boy accepted this without judgment and wandered off. In the kitchen, Mark filled the kettle while the woman lingered near the doorway. "You're sure this is okay?" she asked. "Of course. Tea would be nice." From down the hall, the boy's voice echoed. "Mom, there's a tree in the closet." Mark froze. "A tree?" the woman asked. He nodded slowly. "My daughter used to decorate it." He didn't say more. He didn't have to. Later, as the old artificial tree stood crooked in the living room, dusted off and unfolded, something shifted in the house. The boy handled ornaments with reverence, like they were treasures. The woman cleaned an old tree skirt with her sleeve. Mark watched from behind them, silent, heart pounding. The boy pulled out a wooden reindeer with a name written in faded glitter. "Emily," he read. Mark knelt beside him. Throat tight. "She made that." "Can I hang it?" the boy asked. Mark nodded. "Yes." The boy placed it carefully near the top. "It's the most important one." When the music box played and the boys sang softly, Mark didn't stop the tears. He let them come unashamed as the song filled the empty rooms with memory and meaning. That night didn't fix everything, but it cracked something open. Morning came quietly with cocoa and eggs and shy smiles. And when they left, the boy pressed a handmade card into Mark's hand. "I don't want you to be alone next Christmas." Mark knelt and hugged him like a man holding on to life itself. They came back. Again and again. Days turned into weeks. Weeks into something steadier. The woman, Anna, returned to school. Mark stepped away from the company that had once consumed him and poured himself into something new, something human. They didn't call it destiny. They called it showing up. A year later, the community hall glowed with warmth, filled with people who knew what it meant to feel forgotten. Mark stood among them, not as a savior, but as someone who had been saved too. And when the boys stood up and declared, "Santa didn't forget us," laughter and applause filled the room, because everyone there understood the truth. Sometimes Santa doesn't wear red. Sometimes he sits alone at a bus stop, waiting to be remembered. Thank you for staying with this story of second chances, quiet miracles, and the power of one small voice on a snowy night. If this journey touched your heart, support the channel by subscribing and hitting the hype button. Every click helps us share more stories that remind the world no one is ever truly forgotten. And remember, sometimes the greatest gifts arrive when we least expect them. See you in the next story that speaks to the soul.